The command chamber of the Xerixian flagship hummed with an aura of supremacy. General Vorik leaned back in his obsidian throne, his golden exoskeletal armor gleaming under the sterile light. Around him stood the elite soldiers of the Empire, each draped in ornate battlesuits that combined precision engineering with lethal intent. Their expressions were laced with disdain as they reviewed intercepted footage of human forces in battle. "These humans," Vorik sneered, gesturing dismissively at the hologram, displaying a squad of Earth soldiers wielding ballistic rifles. "They cling to their primitive tools. Bullets, gunpowder, antiquities fit for a museum." A ripple of mocking laughter spread through the room. Commander Kyrex, Vorik's most trusted lieutenant, stepped forward, his voice dripping with contempt. "Perhaps they intend to bore us to death with their outdated tactics." More laughter followed, louder this time, as the soldiers joined in the mockery. "Enough," Vorik said, though his lips curled into a smirk. "We'll give them the honor of facing true warriors. Deploy the 7th Elite Battalion. Let them witness what real weapons and skill can achieve. By the time we're done, Earth will be nothing more than a cautionary tale for other upstart species." The hologram shifted to display a lush, untamed jungle planet. Ventrix 4. This colony world had become a contested zone in the broader conflict between the Xerixian Empire and the fledgling Terran Defense Alliance. Vorik's elite troops were to land there, annihilate the human defenders, and establish a forward base. It was a task he viewed as beneath their capabilities, but necessary for maintaining morale among the Empire's ranks. "Ventrix 4 is a backwater," Kyrex noted. "Let's finish this quickly. The sooner we crush their morale, the sooner they'll surrender." Unbeknownst to the elites, the jungle below was far from undefended. On the surface, Captain James Keller crouched low in the dense underbrush, his face painted in streaks of green and brown to blend seamlessly into his surroundings. His customized sniper rifle rested across his lap, its barrel cloaked with a suppressor to ensure silence. Keller's breathing was steady, his heart rate calm, as he scanned the horizon through his rifle's scope. His earpiece crackled to life. "Captain Keller, the evacuation convoy is on schedule." "Gite, 3 hours." Keller didn't respond immediately, his focus locked on the faint shimmer of light high above the jungle canopy. The Xerixian flagship loomed like a monolithic predator, preparing to release its deadly cargo. "Understood," he finally replied. "I'll keep them occupied. Tell the convoy to stick to the route we discussed." "Yes, sir. Good luck." Keller didn't believe in luck. Years of grueling training and battlefield experience had taught him that survival depended on skill, preparation, and unyielding discipline. He had faced the Xerixians before, enough to know they thrived on arrogance. Their so-called elite troops believed their advanced weaponry made them invincible, a flaw Keller was more than willing to exploit. A thunderous roar echoed across the jungle as the Xerixian drop pods pierced the atmosphere, streaking down like falling stars. The ground trembled under their impact, and Keller could feel the vibration through the earth beneath him. He adjusted his scope, watching as the pods unfolded to reveal soldiers clad in shimmering armor. The elites fanned out in a textbook formation, their movements precise and mechanical. Keller couldn't help but smirk. "Advanced tech, same old tactics," he muttered under his breath. Through his scope, he spotted the unit's leader, a hulking Xerixian whose armor glowed faintly with a plasma field. His voice carried over the jungle through amplified speakers. "Humans of Ventrix 4, your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and you may be spared." Keller whispered to himself, "Yeah, that's not happening." He marked their positions in his mind, noting the scouts equipped with thermal sensors, the drone operators, and the heavy gunners. Every detail mattered. He would need to eliminate key targets first to destabilize their cohesion. The Xerixians began their advance, cutting through the jungle with an air of disdain. Their armor deflected stray branches, and their energy scanners painted the terrain with radiant precision. But they didn't see him. They never did. Keller slowed his breathing, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. He didn't fire yet. Timing was everything. He needed them deeper in the jungle, where their advanced tech would be more of a hindrance than an asset. As the Xerixians disappeared into the foliage, Keller whispered into his mic, "Command, the game's begun. They'll regret underestimating us." His words hung in the air as he shifted position, his movements as silent as a shadow. The hunt was on. The jungle swallowed the Xerixian elites whole, its dense canopy blotting out the sky and muting the sounds of their armored march. General Vorik's troops moved with mechanical precision, their glowing visors scanning for heat signatures and electromagnetic disturbances. What they didn't know was that Captain James Keller had spent days preparing this jungle to be their graveyard. Perched high in a tree, Keller lay motionless, his camouflage blending seamlessly with the leaves. His rifle was steady, the crosshairs trained on the lead scout. He waited, patience honed to perfection, as the alien formation pressed deeper into the jungle. Their overconfidence was palpable, their ranks spread too thin for the terrain. The first shot broke the stillness like a lightning strike. The lead scout fell, his visor shattered, his body crumpling to the forest floor in a lifeless heap. Panic rippled through the ranks as the Xerixians scrambled to pinpoint the source of the attack. "Contact!" shouted one of the soldiers, his voice cutting through the chaos. Keller adjusted his aim, already lining up his next shot. The second round tore through the jungle, taking out a drone operator whose equipment exploded in a burst of sparks. The other drones, now leaderless, began hovering aimlessly, colliding with tree branches and further disorienting the squad. "Split into teams," Commander Kyrex barked. "Fan out and find the sniper." But that was exactly what Keller wanted. As the Xerixians fragmented, they became easier prey. Keller moved silently through the trees, his steps deliberate and calculated. He never stayed in one position for long, knowing that even the best ambush could turn deadly if he grew complacent. The first team stumbled into one of Keller's traps, a series of tripwires rigged with makeshift noisemakers. The Xerixians froze as a clattering of metal cans echoed around them, their energy scanners lighting up with false positives. In their hesitation, Keller struck again. A single shot pierced the humid air, and the team leader's helmet exploded in a spray of alien ichor. The remaining soldiers fired blindly into the jungle, their plasma rifles cutting through the underbrush but hitting nothing. "Where is he?" one of them snarled, his voice tinged with fear. Keller smirked from his hidden perch. "Right here," he whispered, squeezing the trigger again. Another soldier fell, clutching at the smoking hole in his chest. Meanwhile, the second team was attempting to use their advanced scanners to track Keller's heat signature. What they didn't realize was that he had scattered decoys throughout the jungle, thermal emitters designed to mimic a human presence. "This way," one of the soldiers shouted, leading his team toward a glowing hotspot. When they arrived, all they found was a smoldering piece of metal. Confusion turned to dread as Keller picked them off one by one. His shots were unerring, each round finding its mark with lethal precision. Commander Kyrex's voice crackled over the comms. "Regroup. Do not engage alone. He's luring you into traps." But the damage was done. Keller had turned the jungle into a labyrinth of death, and the Xerixians were quickly running out of soldiers. Kyrex finally managed to rally the remaining troops in a clearing, their armor battered and their morale shaken. "This is no ordinary human," he growled. "He's exploiting our weaknesses. We must stay together and outlast him." As if on cue, Keller's voice echoed through the clearing, carried by a small speaker he had planted earlier. "Outlast me?" he said, his tone mocking. "You're already running on borrowed time." Kyrex's mandibles clicked in frustration as he scanned the perimeter. Ignore the taunts. He's trying to distract us. But distraction was only part of Keller's plan. From his vantage point, he could see the Xerixians huddled together, their formation tight but vulnerable. He loaded an armor-piercing round into his rifle and took careful aim. The shot rang out, striking the power core of a soldier's armor. The resulting explosion knocked several Xerixians off their feet, sowing chaos in their ranks once more. Keller used the confusion to reposition, vanishing into the jungle like a ghost. As the survivors struggled to regroup, it became clear that the jungle wasn't just a battleground. It was Keller's domain. The dense foliage, the traps, the misdirection, it all worked to his advantage. The Xerixians, despite their superior technology, were outmatched by the human sniper's cunning and precision. Kyrex clenched his fists, his confidence eroding with every passing moment. "This isn't a fight," he muttered, his voice low. "It's a slaughter," unbeknownst to him. Keller was already watching, his rifle trained on the commander. But he didn't fire, not yet. He wanted to see how far they would fall before delivering the final blow. The jungle had grown eerily silent. The cacophony of Xerixian plasma fire and Keller's precise rifle shots was replaced by the oppressive hum of insects and rustling leaves. For the alien elites, every shadow seemed alive, every noise a harbinger of doom. The hunters had become the hunted, and they knew it. Commander Kyrex, his once proud posture sagging under the weight of mounting losses, rallied the tattered remnants of his squad in a desperate huddle. "We will not fall to one primitive," he growled, though his voice betrayed a hint of doubt. His soldiers, fewer than a dozen now, stood in a trembling semicircle, their advanced armor dented, scorched, and smeared with alien ichor. Above them, hidden among the treetops, Keller observed the scene through his rifle's scope. The Xerixians' tight formation made them a tempting target, but Keller wasn't rushing. He could see the fear in their movements, the hesitation in their glances. That fear was a weapon, and Keller wielded it masterfully. The Xerixians made a last-ditch attempt to regroup. Kyrex activated a holographic map, displaying the terrain around them. "We'll head for the extraction point. Use overlapping fields of fire. He can't take us all down if we move as one." The plan was sound. If their enemy were anyone other than Captain Keller. The group moved cautiously, plasma rifles scanning every direction, as Keller tracked them from above. His traps had thinned their numbers, but now it was time for precision strikes to dismantle their resolve. He adjusted his scope, zeroing in on the rear guard. One shot. The alien soldier collapsed, the sizzling hole in his armor a grim testament to Keller's marksmanship. Panic erupted among the ranks. "He's behind us," one soldier shouted, spinning wildly and firing into the underbrush. "Hold your fire," Kyrex barked, but it was too late. The sudden chaos unraveled their fragile cohesion, and Keller used the distraction to reposition. He moved silently through the trees, his every step calculated to remain undetected. The Xerixians pressed forward, their extraction point tantalizingly close. But Keller had anticipated their route. Ahead of them lay a clearing, open ground with no cover. Kyrex stopped at the edge, his mandibles clicking nervously. "We have no choice. Move quickly." The first few soldiers broke into a sprint, crossing the exposed ground. Keller watched through his scope, waiting for Kyrex himself to make the crossing. When the commander finally stepped into the clearing, Keller fired. The shot didn't hit Kyrex directly. It struck the ground at his feet, sending up a shower of dirt and forcing him to dive for cover. Kyrex's voice roared over the comms. "He's toying with us. We must." Another shot interrupted him, this time taking out the soldier to his left. The Xerixians froze, their bravado shattered. Keller's voice crackled through the Xerixian comms, his tone cold and deliberate. "You're not prey because you're weak. You're prey because you underestimated your opponent. The psychological blow landed harder than any bullet. The remaining soldiers began retreating, abandoning their wounded and scattering into the jungle. Keller let them go. They were no longer a threat. They were survivors carrying the story of their humiliation. All that remained was Kyrex. The commander lay prone, clutching his plasma rifle as his chest heaved with exertion. "Show yourself, human," he shouted, his voice echoing in the oppressive silence. Keller stepped into the clearing, his movements unhurried, his rifle slung over his shoulder. The sun broke through the canopy, casting him in a golden light that seemed almost otherworldly. His figure was imposing yet calm, as if he were in complete control of the battlefield. "You wanted to hunt me," Keller said, his voice even. "Now you know what it's like to be hunted." Kyrex raised his weapon, but Keller didn't flinch. Before the alien could fire, a well-placed shot from Keller's sidearm disarmed him, the plasma rifle clattering to the ground. "You've lost," Keller continued, his tone sharp. "Take that message back to your leaders. Tell them Earth isn't weak. And tell them what happens when you underestimate a human." Kyrex hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. He scrambled to his feet and disappeared into the jungle, his pride in tatters. As the jungle fell silent once more, Keller retrieved his spent casings and disabled his traps. The mission was over, but its impact would ripple far beyond the battlefield. Somewhere in the galaxy, alien war councils would hear Kyrex's tale and think twice before mocking humanity again. Keller shouldered his rifle and began his trek out of the jungle, his figure blending into the greenery like a ghost. He left no trace of his presence, except for the shattered morale of the alien elites who had dared to challenge him.